Here's a PC build featuring the new 10th Gen Core i5-10600K. For this PC build I chose the Corsair RM650W gold rated power supply for its 90% efficiency from the wall at load and the 10-year warranty. I've built several PCs over the years using Corsair power supplies and they're very reliable. I still run a 10-year-old AX1200W from my first Sandy Bridge build in 2011. The first thing I'm doing right now is setting up a test bench. So I'm going to take out the power supply, hook it to the motherboard, connect all the components and test everything for functionality and install Windows outside of the case. It's much easier this way because if you have a defective part, you don't have to uninstall everything from the case. Okay, so it's fully modular, so we're only going to plug in the cables we need. The first one is going to be the 24-pin motherboard connector. It's going to go these two slots right there using those two ends. Okay, there's also an additional CPU connector there because on the motherboard there's a next to the 8-pin CPU power or EPS connector there's also a 4-pin. It's optional, it's only for extreme overclocking, but I'll plug it in since we have it and we'll see how it looks. If it takes up too much room, I'll disconnect it. Next will be the PCI Express cable. It's going to take, I believe, a 6 and an 8-pin for the RTX 2070 Super. And we have no SATA devices, strictly going to be M.2 using the 970 Evo Plus. I forgot to mention that a SATA powered connection is required to run the Corsair H100 and Corsair lighting node that controls all the RGB lighting on the fans. I am unboxing the processor, which is an Intel 10th generation Comet Lake 10600K. It's unlocked with 6 cores and 12 threads. It's currently the best valued gaming processor on the market, beating the Ryzen 5 series by AMD and matching the frame rates of the Intel 10900K, which costs over $600. My friend's brother requested me build this PC so he could go back to school and play games during quarantine, but we know he's not going to be doing any homework anytime soon. So we got 6 cores, 4.1 gigahertz base clock, and I believe it boosts up to 4.8. The drive of choice for this build and many of my previous builds has been the Samsung 970 series in M.2 NVMe format. This happens to be the 970 Evo Plus in 1 terabyte. It has plenty of space for all his games and operating system. It has a 5-year warranty and reads over 3,500 megabytes per second. The memory for this build is Corsair's Vengeance Pro RGB, 3200 megahertz, 16 gigabytes. It's a 2x8 kit. Currently 16 gigabytes is all a gamer needs, and 3200 megahertz happens to be the sweet spot when it comes to speed. You're not paying for too much and you're getting just the right amount of performance. The motherboard is an Asus Republic of Gamers or ROG Strix Z490-E featuring Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth, 2.5 gigabit LAN, 2 M.2 slots. All USB ports are USB 3. There's 10 in the rear, 7 up front. Has plenty of RGB connectors and plenty of fan connections to keep the system cool. It has solid voltage regulation, so it won't have a problem overclocking the 10600K. Got the manual there. All the accessories. Zip ties, RGB extension cables, VRM fan. Need that. Free keychain, lanyard, temperature probe. Got the rubber pads for the M.2 SSD. SATA cables, which we don't need. And these are the screws for the fan, and that's the M.2 standoffs. Here's the board. Okay, we're going to install the CPU, 10600K, 6-core. Open the latch. Now there's two ways. Usually there's a arrow in the corner. You line up the arrow on that side. Also, a lot of people don't tell you, but it's actually keyed. It's notched on the left and the right side. There's these cutouts, and it only fits one way. So if you look down here on the board, there's notches. That's it. And we'll put the RAM in. Got 2 sticks of 8 gig each, so 16 total, 3200 megahertz. And specifically on Intel, you're going to use the outer two when you have 2 sticks. I see some people, they mess up, they put it on the inside. So if you only have 2, you use the furthest away from the CPU. It's shorter on one side, longer on the other. Short side, long side, so just match it up. Make sure to skip, go every other slot. Don't be like the Verge. So now you're running in dual channel, fully seated. Next step is to take off this heatsink so we could access the M.2 slots. So now that I got this one uncovered, it does come with 2 standoffs and 2 sets of screws. We're only using 1 drive. So instead of losing or risking the chance of losing the standoff and the screw, I'll just pre-install it and leave it in place. If you have a drive connected to this top M.2 slot, it will disable SATA port 2 right here on this side. We don't have any SATA devices right now, so it doesn't matter. But when I install any kind of SATA drive, I like to use them in order from like ports 1 through 6. So I'm going to leave these open. I'm going to populate this one on the bottom, which is going to shut off 5 and 6. Alright, this is an optional step, but it does come with a extra thermal pad. It's kind of like a spacer. The reason is this is a single-sided drive, so there's no chips on this side. So when you lay it into the slot, it doesn't lay flat because there's still some gap under it. So it's kind of like a spacer. So just unpeel it. And then they want you to stick it on top of the existing pad that's down there. And that will add some extra height, maybe like 2 more millimeters. Then we stick the drive in there at an angle until the gold contacts are fully seated. Then you take your screw. That's it, not too tight, just till it's fully seated. I'm just replacing the plastic cover that goes over the M.2 and chipset. Everyone's favorite part is peeling off the plastic on brand new hardware. This is where the optional VRM fan goes. It's meant for extreme overclocking. For us, it won't ever spin up because our VRMs will never reach extreme temperatures. But it came inside the box, so I decided to install it anyways. The video card is a Evga RTX 2070 Super XC Gaming, which sells for about $559 on Newegg or Microcenter. It's actually really good for 1440p gaming and high refresh 1080p gaming. He plans to play games such as CSGO and Fortnite on a 165Hz monitor. It's a dual slot card that requires a 650 watt power supply, a 6 and an 8 pin PCI Express power connector. It has a 5-year warranty and can easily be overclocked using EVGA Precision X software. I didn't record the unboxing of the Corsair H100 water cooler because it's kind of a long process and it takes a while to install the fans onto the radiator to mount the water block onto the processor. So right now I'm just putting on the RTX 2070 Super, connecting the 6 and 8 pin power connections so I can get the bench set up and running. Alright, graphics card is in, it's powered, the cable is plugged in for the power, and I've got the display port. Okay, the monitor, see if we got power to that. Yep. Motherboard powers up. Okay, so the board has lights. Everything is plugged in as far as I know. Let's see if we can short the pins and get it booted. There we go. Everything's spinning. RGB is all lit up. It's the H100. The video card. Okay. We just got to run setup. So I'm going to go ahead and get into the BIOS real quick. But it looks like it recognized our drive, 1 terabyte. We got a slider, Corsair slider. That's my USB drive with Windows. We got 16 gigs of memory. There's the processor i5-10600K. So it looks like we're good to go and set up Windows. Successful, no defective parts. So it's always a good habit to test the parts outside of the case before you install. Windows 10 is actually free to install. You can download it using the media creation tool from the Microsoft website. I installed it onto a USB drive and booted to it. It took me right to this install window, and I'm just going to install Windows 10 Home 64-bit. If you don't register your Windows, you'll have a watermark in the bottom right, and you won't be able to personalize or customize your background wallpaper. Otherwise, you'll be able to access the internet and play games just fine. Loading from the USB drive. Windows is done setting up. It's just doing the final updates. So once this turns off, I'm going to throw everything in the case. There we go. We're at Windows, downloading some more updates for the motherboard. We do some more software. Get the graphics driver going. We've got Wi-Fi built in. So here's the antenna plugged into the back right here. The two gold wires. I'm messing with the IQ software. It controls the RGB lighting. Just going through the different modes. Alright, case is open. Corsair 220T. I'm going to get all this hardware in that case. Looks tiny, but we'll see what happens. Alright, so earlier I had installed the M.2 drive in a lower slot down here, but when I ran the benchmarks after installing Windows, I was only getting 1700 megabyte read speeds. So I'm going to have to do this one. Hopefully this gives me about 3500. I didn't realize it made a difference. Alright, then we got to peel off the thermal pad here. There's the adhesive on the back. Since this is a fully modular power supply, I only attached the cables that are required to run this build, which saves me a lot of clutter and makes cable management a lot easier. You can see here I'm opening up the bag of 4 screws that were included with the power supply to secure it in place. So the cables I used are the standard 24-pin motherboard cable, the 8-pin or 12-volt cable that powers the CPU. I also attached the optional 4-pin power cable for the CPU. It's only used for extreme overclocking, but it doesn't hurt to have the extra cable plugged in because the processor will only draw enough power to run itself. It's self-regulating, so I doubt that it'll ever pull power from the second cable, but it's there anyways. I have a SATA power cable that runs the H100 water cooler and also the Corsair RGB lighting node, which all the RGB fans are plugged into, so when I run IQ software they're all in sync. And then lastly I have the PCI Express power cable for the graphics card, the RTX 2070 Super, that requires a 6 and an 8-pin power connection. After installing the power supply into the bottom of the case, you can see I'm gently lowering the motherboard into position. The key to this is lay it in and around a 30-degree angle. Use the IO shield in the rear as a reference and just line that up with the cutout in the back of the case. And once that's in position, just gently drop it down and it'll fall onto the pre-installed standoffs. You can also see that I have left the RAM modules in place from when they were already on the test bench. I had the CPU installed. I also had the M.2 drive installed. It's easier to install parts onto the motherboard outside of the case because it gives you more room to work with. So here I'm just making sure everything lined up and then opening in the bag of 9 screws that I need to secure it in place. Just start with the outer screws and work your way around till they're all secure. Just make sure you don't over tighten the screws because you can strip them out easily or crack the board. Just turn the screwdriver till it bottoms out. Alright, this took a long time. Had to rearrange the fans. Took the two that were originally in the front, put them up here. Had to install the radiator. It's a really tight fit. So pushed it all the way to the very top. Put the third fan in right under it. Barely fit, but I got it. Took me over 30 minutes for all that. Alright, this is how you apply thermal paste. Not like the Verge. You're not icing a cake. Put about that much on. That's plenty. I had already taken off the pre-applied because I had it on the test box. So now it's clean. Use rubbing alcohol. Mount it up. That's it. Tighten the thumb screws. Just do it loose, hand tight for now. I'm going to finish the other two. We'll be right back. Now I'm installing the Evga RTX 2070 Super graphics card. It's a 2-slot card, so I've removed the 2 covers on the left hand side, gently lined up with the PCI Express X16 slot, pushed it down gently, it locked into place, and now I'm using the 2 screws to secure it. After installing the graphics card into the proper PCI Express slot, I'm now attaching one 8-pin and one 6-pin power connection. The ends of the cables are split, so you can convert from 6 to 8 or from 8 to 6. This RTX 2070 Super takes one of each. So now I'm just pushing the 2 sides together, making this into an 8-pin. And on one side it has a hook, and that hook faces down, and once I push that in, it will lock into place. And repeat that with the 6-pin. I installed Corsair's IQ software, which controls the RGB lighting for the fans, the H100 water cooler, the memory modules, and the motherboard. I'm using Evga Precision to control the lighting on the graphics card. And now I'm running the benchmark for the Samsung 970 EVO Plus, just to make sure I'm getting 3500 megabytes per second read speeds. This is Heaven Benchmark 4.0, just stressing the graphics card. I did a mild overclock by pushing the power target and temperature targets up and adding a couple hundred megahertz to the core and the memory clocks. Just making sure everything's stable, kind of doing a burn in, letting it run overnight. Here's the score I got for 1080p and max settings. up these wires. Gonna manage the cables. I'll be back when I'm done. Keep in mind we're running 6 RGB fans and a ton of other cables. There's not much room to work with behind the case, and it was a very tight fit, but I eventually got the door on. Alright, doing the honors. The best part, getting a new computer, is peeling off the sticker off the glass. Get it all off clean. If you have to unscrew the bolt, you can actually unscrew the... Try that. Just make sure the glass doesn't fall off. There we go. Got it. Alright, you want to hit the button?
You can change colors?
Yeah, you can fully customize it. I'll show you how you do it. So I gotta hit the button on the monitor because it was off. Okay. That's it. After setting up his brand new PC, we downloaded Steam for his main game library. We added the Rockstar, Ubisoft, and Origin launchers. Downloaded Fortnite, CSGO, a couple of other free-to-play games. And then I ran him through the Corsair IQ software to customize his lighting. Overall, the entire build was about $2,500 after taxes. All the parts were purchased at Microcenter. If you like this video, hit the like button, share it with your friends. Thanks for watching.